So Deibert gives us a pretty gloomy outlook here, and we can find only a little bit of hope when we think through his article. He suggests a number of changes. Mostly these have to do with regulation, and that's how we know that Deibert's probably writing from a more liberal or progressive politically perspective. So he says we need more regulation on the companies that harvest our data and how they use it. We need to establish privacy as a human right, and we need to respect it much more dearly than we have been. We need to petition against having our personal data exploited for profit. We need to know what companies do with our data. On the fourth point, a demand to know what companies do with our data, we can suppose that this also has to do with clearer terms of agreement policies, ones that we can actually read, that we can actually understand. And then finally, we should petition for greater competition in the social media industry because the social media giants, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, are highly centralized. They don't have much competition, so there isn't that much preventing them from behaving as they wish to behave, other than the government and government regulation. They surveil us intensely, and these platforms are way too easily abused. So, according to Deibert, what do we want? Social connections and information access. What do we want to discourage? Financial, political, and personal exploitation. Deibert also wants to discourage misinformation, our basest instincts, and I would argue polarization and the general crumbling of civil discourse. So we want to keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff. It's a compromise position in the end. What I want you to remember is that social media platforms invade your privacy all the time in every way that they can, and it is worthwhile to seek ways to protect yourself from the worst of this kind of surveillance. There are tips. You can start Googling that. You can hide some of your information and share less of it if you want to. Something else that I want you to remember is that journalism is a citizen resource. Don't give in to cynicism. Just find the sources that you trust that are hopefully middle of the road politically. Fact check what you like with something that's perhaps nudged one way or the other to your personal preferences online. Double check with sources like allsides.org. And just remember that even if you access news on social media, it doesn't mean that the journalism itself is low quality because you found it on Facebook. It just means you need to do a little bit more work to be literate about the media that you're consuming and to make sure that you do trust and seek out things that you trust, information online. I have 2 mini case studies that I want to show you that may help you consider the potential ramifications of sharing your data. So the first is COVID-19 travel monitoring. A private company used cell phone data that was available to them, perhaps through data brokers, to see where people who had done spring break in Fort Lauderdale ended up going after spring break, but during the COVID-19 outbreak. So you can see pretty stunning information there. People traveling all over the United States, and particularly from, let's say, our part of the country, or Chicago, over to Florida and back again. This is obviously concerning. From an epidemiological perspective, this is valuable information, but from a personal perspective, you gotta wonder, do you want to be one of those dots there that got tracked? Maybe, maybe not. This kind of thing could lead to fines, fees, court fees, and so on. Probably not in this government, but you can imagine a scenario in which some authority having access to this information could penalize the people who made a poor choice in terms of public health. The second case study that I want you to consider is that of consumer genomics. So these are DNA testing companies like 23andMe and Ancestry.com. So this is going way beyond what a social media platform has access to, usually. But what I want to point out here is that this is a clearly dangerous activity, if you ask me, because you're giving up so much more of your information than you need to when you spit into a vial and send it into one of these companies, because these companies are not as regulated as they should be. 23andMe has been embroiled in a fight with the FDA for a long time. But The regulations are trailing behind the data collection, which means that people who are early adopters of these technologies are at great risk for how their information may be used and stored. So this could lead to this could lead to insurance discrimination or other problems with how data are used. Sometimes these data are used for major healthcare advances. Some of those advances may be privatized and quite expensive. So this is another case where we need to consider what we give up and what we gain when we share our information with companies who may not have our best interests in mind. So, not trying to sound paranoid, not recommending that you sleep with a foil hat on when you go to bed tonight, just giving you some more tools to be more literate about how you use the media and how they might use you.